Hello friends, myself Dr. Nidhi Darbari on My Education Treasure. In my previous video on lecturing, I had discussed about the meaning and shortcomings of lecturing and nature and suggested improvements of lecturing. Today in my present video, I am going to discuss about the advantages and disadvantages of lecturing as a technique of teaching. Lecture method is the oldest procedure of teaching. It is widely used in schools and colleges. It is good method as it covers a wide topic at college or secondary school and higher secondary classes, but its success depends on the personality and the ability of the students. The word lecture is derived from the Latin word lectus, which means that which is read. It wasn't until the 16th century that the word was used to describe oral instruction given by a teacher in front of an audience of students. Presently, the teacher uses lecture method that involves primarily an oral instruction to a group of learners. Many lectures are supplemented by some sort of visual aids such as slideshow, a word document, an image, or a film. Some teachers may even use whiteboard or chalkboard to emphasize important points in their lectures. It is the most conventional teacher-centered instructional method wherein teacher transmits the knowledge and the learners are passive recipients of it. All the activities related to teaching learning process in the classroom and beyond the classroom are under the control of the teacher. These activities are planned and are rigid in nature. Lecture method is generally applicable to learners who are studying in higher grades and are above average. Average and below average learners or students feel disinterested in transaction of the content through lectures. This method fits into the content wherein the teacher has to extensively focus on narration, memorization and information. It is a method of instruction which is suitable to a classroom of large size where large syllabus is to be covered in limited time. It is not suitable to contemporary multicultural classrooms as it does not emphasize cardinal principles of teaching, activity and child-centeredness. As teacher, one should refrain from using lecture method in schools, especially up to the secondary level, as it is the stage where the child learns better through concrete experiences rather than through their mere representations. Advantages of lecture method. Lecture method has few advantages that has made it most used method of teaching for so long. Important advantages of this method are that it is teacher controlled. Because the lecture is delivered by one authoritative figure, a teacher, a professor or an instructor, she or he has full control over the transaction of the lesson and the tone of the classroom. She or he is able to shape the course of the lecture, so lecture remains highly consistent. New material. Lectures are literally just long-winded explanation of information deemed important by the lecturer. As such, learners can absorb large quantities of new information. Effortless. The lecture method makes the learning process mostly effortless on the part of the students who need only to pay attention during the lecture and take notes when they feel necessary. Because so little input is required from the students, it is most clear, straightforward and uncomplicated way to impart learners to large quantities of information, as explained above, and in a way that is controlled and time sensitive. Students just need to know how to take good notes. Lectures give the students training in listening and taking notes skills. It is the incumbency of the teacher to use this method in his teaching. He cannot avoid this method whatsoever other method he is using. For introducing any new lesson in the class, lecture is an easy and an effective method. Cognitive as well as affective domains of pupils' behavior can be developed through this method. More content can be presented to students in lesser amount of time through lecture method. Lectures save time and energy. It is the easy method for new teachers. It lays much stress on presentation, so it can develop the ability of presentation in students also. If lecture is living, it can motivate the students for self-study. Habit of concentration for a longer period of time can be developed in students by this method. Lecture gives the teacher an opportunity to come into immediate contact with the pupils, to establish face-to-face contact. It develops attention span of the students. A well-prepared and well-delivered lecture can make just subject interesting. The person giving a lecture can cover up a lot of syllabus if he has to cover the syllabus. Good lectures stimulate brighter students. It is more useful for brilliant students. It facilitates rapport between the teacher and the taught. Through lecturing, the person can give an outlet to his feeling and thoughts till he or she is exhausted. Disadvantage of the lecture method. What is funny about the lecture method is that many of the pros listed above could actually be seen as cons as well. Many don't find the lecture method helpful in the least, and you'll find the explanations below. It is one-way communication. People who are against the lecture method finds it as one-way communication. Professors dictate information to learners who have little or no opportunity to provide their personal input or examine the information being delivered. Students just have to sit down and take information. Sometimes learners will even be forced to agree with the lecture if they want a passing grade. If the lecture is on a sensitive topic over which there is much conflicting discourse, you can imagine the problem this might cause. Passive listeners. Not only do people find the lecture method a biased, one-way communication, they also see it as a wholly passive experience for the students. This isn't just harmful because of the ways we described above. Not being actively engaged in a discussion over certain learning experience can make the learning experience itself seems worthless to a student. After all, the aim of education isn't to program learners to think a certain way according to the instructor's lecture, but to critically analyze the information being provided and learn how to apply it in different contexts. If the learners have no opportunity to discuss the course material with the person delivering the lecture, they will receive only a shallow understanding of the subject being discussed. Simply to put it, they might even be bored by the material because they will have no opportunity to learn how the subject applies to them on a personal level. Strong speakers' expectations. The lecture method can be disadvantage to the professor as well. Not all academics can be expected to have the same level of public speaking skill. What if a teacher is a genius in his or her field, knows the material from every angle, and is enthusiastic about the subject, but has trouble speaking in front of a large group? The quality of professor's course should not suffer because she or he is unable to prepare a decent lecture. Just as being lectured might not be the learning method of choice for many learners, being the one that is expected to do the lecturing might not be the best way for every instructor to present his or her course material. It is a teacher-centered method. It is a monotonous, tiring, and sometimes it becomes a boring method. It brings a lot of burden and reading to the teacher. There is very little scope for the pupil activity. The pupils or students lose opportunity to make self-study. It discourages the self-efforts by the students. It is not an interactive method. It makes students inactive. Lectures can soon result in monotony. Lecturing is against the principle of learning by doing. There can be some necessary arguments and that can lead to some major problems. Every teacher is not expert enough to deliver the lecture. An average student may not be able to fix up their attention to a lecture of 40 to 45 minutes. The listener may not like it after some time. It may include irrelevant material also. Lecturing is one way speaking only. It is not considered good for classroom teaching. Therefore, the teacher should use lecturing as a device of teaching and not as a full-fledged method which is continued for longer duration. If you found the video to be informative and interesting, please give a like to the video to motivate me, share it with others and subscribe it so that whenever I upload a new video, you will get a notification. Suggestions for improvement. A teacher must keep the following points in mind while using a lecture as a successful method of teaching in the class. The content of the lecture should be systematized in a logical and sequential manner, and listeners should not find any gap in the content. The language of the lecture should be easy, clear and understandable to students, and questions should also be asked by the teacher during lecture for seeking concentration of pupils. In order to make the presentation of the content effective, material aids such as charts, graphs, maps, pictures, etc. should be used along with the lecture, and important points should be written on the blackboard. Illustration should be given in order to clarify the difficult points of the subject matter. There should be sufficient flow in the lecture, and for this purpose no help should be taken from books or notes during lecture. Lecture should not be too long to be boring. Only short lecture is recommended. Lectures make the classroom environment dull and serious. A teacher should minimize this seriousness and dullness by light and humorous talks also here and there. There should be complete peacefulness in the class. Thank you very much for patiently watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe.